Hi everyone, my name is Brad. I work for the Little Traverse Conservancy and I'm here in Hessel today at the Avery Arts and Nature Learning Center, putting on a short presentation for you all about plants as part of the Avery Nature Conservation Program. So let's explore some of the plants that make the Cheneaux Islands a really unique area, a really special part that I really like to explore, so let's get going. We're going to start here and maybe even spend most of our day at the Birch Preserve for a number of reasons. Number one is that it's huge. It's a really big preserve. Number two, it's easy to find. And number three, there's a great diversity of habitats here. So when we have a diversity of habitats, there are hopefully a diversity of plants there as well. This won't be our only stop. We're going to go a few different places as well. There are a huge number of different conservation organizations around here that are all doing their part to help preserve land and preserve plant diversity. So let's jump onto the trail. We're going to stick to the trails for the most part today. Even though everybody likes hiking off trail occasionally, we're going to stick to the trails today. And we're not going to pick any of these flowers. When we have some of these more unique plants, they need really unique habitat types and have some pretty intricate requirements for growth, so they're not going to do really great in your garden. They wouldn't look very nice in a vase or anything like that. So of course, when we find all these plants, we're going to leave them right where they are. I tell folks all the time that you don't really have to go that far to find cool plants. You just have to look a little bit closer, and sometimes I get the sense that they don't really believe me. But I'm here still in the parking lot of the Birch Nature Preserve, and I found something right on the side of it. So I'm gonna duck down and show you guys how cool this thing is. I didn't even make it to the trailhead, so we'll check this out before we go. So they're hardly noticeable here, but if we look in just the right direction, we can see these very ghostly white pieces sticking up. They almost look like a fungus or something. There's a few clusters. There's one back there. They're all kind of nestled down in here. This is a plant, but if you can look and see close, it doesn't have any leaves. It does have a stem. There are these flowers popping up, but there's no green to speak of, and plants are usually supposed to be green, right? This one figured kind of a workaround for it. It doesn't have any green because it's a parasite. It uses its roots to parasitize the roots of other plants, and it even has kind of a preference for different plants. This one prefers goldenrod, these little ones right here. You can tell I'm right next to the parking lot from the road noise, but these goldenrods are serving as the nutrient source for all of these little cancer root flowers down here. I think that's pretty incredible. So we're right in the parking lot. We're already finding some great stuff here on our nature preserves. Okay, so I'm gonna start off easy with one of the most iconic and eye-catching species that we have up here in the Cheneaux Islands. If you don't already know, this is the yellow lady slipper. Wow, really, really pretty. It's got this really big bottom lip to it that serves actually a really important purpose in all of the lady slipper orchids. When we look down in there, we can see all of the dots, that nice red coloration inside. The flower is counting on that to attract some pollinators. The strategy is a pollinator flies right in the top right there, right where my pencil went, flies right in the top, and just like an insect trap that you might keep in your kitchen, it can't find its way back out once it goes in. It gets kind of confused. But there is a convenient way out that the flower has built in right up on the top there. Hopefully you can see that kind of nostril looking portion. Insects can get out that way, but not before they pass by what are known in the orchids as the pollinia. They're the pollen bearing portions. So any insect that flies into that big lower pouch, that big lip, has to climb out through that nostril, and it has to get a bunch of pollen on it. And hopefully it's gonna go visit maybe another flower, or if there's not a nice big patch somewhere here in this cedar thicket, it'll visit a whole bunch of them. And I think I might actually hang out here for just a few minutes to see if maybe we can catch a pollinator in the act. They're pretty effective, these flowers, so let's see if we can find one. All right, I really hope you can see this guy. We've got a bee coming right out of the top of that flower. It is completing the pollination strategy. Look at that, he's doing it. Oh man, that's incredible. So this is what the flower is really counting on. All these bees, they gotta climb right out of the top, and there he goes, off to pollinate some more flowers. That is just incredible. How smart could that flower be? Wow. All right, so now I'm here just down the trail, a little ways on the Birch Preserve. Actually, it's the Murtaugh edition of the Birch Preserve. I'm heading out to Search Bay, and I came across a pretty interesting little spot. I'm right underneath this little fir canopy, and I noticed kind of a wet spot down here, so I started looking around. One of my favorite things to do when I'm out and about is to try and ignore the things that I already know and maybe look a little bit closer at some of the other stuff. So I could tell we've got some sarsaparilla over there. We've got some poplars coming up over here. But when you look down a little bit closer in between the Canada Mayflowers, I'm starting to see in this wet spot all these very small heart-shaped leaves with a little bit of fuzz on them. I happen to recognize them. They're pretty identifiable once you've seen enough of them, and I knew that these would have flowers somewhere, so I actually was able to find a few flowers. They're zoomed right there. And what I'm gonna do actually, just so you can get a much better view at this, is I'm gonna strap this little magnifying glass to my phone camera so that we can get a much better look at this Mitrewort flower. Oh, wow, holy cow. They are just really, really dainty. Look at that, they're pretty unique, they're pretty complex. This flower is also known as the bishop's cap, because if you look at them from the back, they kind of look like a funny hat. This one is also known as the naked mitrewort. We have a different species of mitrewort actually further south in Michigan, but this naked mitrewort or naked bishop's cap is very unique to the northern forests. So they don't have it down south. It really can only be found up here. Really likes wet areas, coniferous swamps, fir thickets that tend to be wet, and cedar thickets. So that's a great one to look for while you're out and about. And man, oh man, kudos to you if you can get those flowers in a good picture. They're really, really pretty. I'm still exploring just a little bit of the Burge Preserve. I've made it all the way out to Search Bay. So I'm standing on Brule Point, and that means over there is St. Martin Point. Search Bay is looking beautiful as always, and in the summertime, of course, I like to walk the lakeshore just like anyone. And as I was walking the lakeshore, I just happened to be looking over out at some of our spruces like this one here, and I noticed there's an incredible phenomenon going on. There's an interaction between two plants going here that I would really like to show you. So as we walk closer, we can see that there's kind of a bundle of stems and sticks right here. We kind of tend to call that a witch's broom, and that can come from pretty much any plant virus or pathogen, or anything that's attacking the plant can cause it to stress out and create extra growth around that area. So when we investigate a little closer, the needles here seem to be healthy, but if we really dive into this witch's broom here, we can see a lot of these little brown projections coming out of the stem. There's actually quite a few. Wow, there's a ton of them right there. Can you see all those? They're kind of in the shade, but all of these teeny tiny projections coming out of the stem of the spruce tree, they're actually an entirely different plant aside from the spruce. Down south, they have mistletoe, just like we hear in all the holiday songs and things like that. This is actually also a type of mistletoe, but it is very unique to northern boggy areas, and especially our northern black spruce. This is the eastern dwarf mistletoe, and what you're looking right there is pretty much the entire plant. That's the whole thing. That's why they call it the dwarf mistletoe. It is teeny tiny, and it's also one of our very first plants to bloom. So really, this plant's been around for quite a while already this year. It's already bloomed, might have even set seed. I might look around for some seeds here, but it's a parasitic plant. It'll feed off of the nutrients of the spruce tree, which may be why in a couple of years it might not be looking so hot. I found another, there's some witch's brooms over there as well. I found some that might have actually died from this, but it is a native plant, so it exists within the ecosystem. They all co-evolve together. It's a pretty good plant and a really interesting one to look for. So anytime I'm driving the roads along the lakeshore in the Lake Cheneaux, I always look for this. You'll see it up high in trees, but it's a real treat to be able to find it down close where you can actually get a look at it. So I'll put up a picture of this hopefully so you can see what the blooms look like. It's a great one to keep an eye out for, especially as you're driving, or if you're on the lakeshore going for a nice walk, or really in any bog too. Hidden way down, kind of in this wet fir thicket, I found a really wonderful summer blooming plant. Very handsome flower right here. Has a great name for it. This one is twin flower. Twin flower for the two flowers that pop right up out of these leaves. The leaves are kind of tough to spot. Here they are, all creeping all over these little mossy humps that you can see that kind of coagulate on the bottoms of these trees here. So a nice wet mossy hummock with all these vines creeping over it. You can see quite a few of them are not in bloom just yet, but they're just kind of starting. Great little flowers that almost they swing almost like bells. So really, really pretty plant. Great one for wetter areas. Right off the platform here at Mackinac Bay is another pretty incredible one. It's a really easy one to see right off the side of the trail. We'll look down and see some pretty big leaves and really big flowers. Almost looks kind of like a raspberry here, and they are related. What we're looking for, wow, holy cow. There's some really big leaves on this. So it looks like a raspberry, kind of like a blackberry too, and that's because they're related to each other. Anybody that's a berry picking aficionado might recognize this one. It is very unique to our northern forest. It'll only grow kind of close to the Great Lakes in these kind of wet, foresty clearing areas. It is the thimbleberry. Thimbleberry is really good. It makes great jam. It's very well sought after by people that like to go berry picking, maybe even more than blueberries or huckleberries. So this is a great spot to see it. They grow in these nice big thickets, so the more you look around, the more thimbleberry you'll start to see. It's a really incredible plant, and it's very tasty. For anyone out there who's ever joined a stewardship event or maybe an invasive species removal day, they will know that honeysuckle is a terrible invader to our forest that can lead to a huge loss in biodiversity and create a monoculture in our forest. But luckily, we have some native honeysuckles. This is one of them, actually. This is called, some people call it limber honeysuckle or glaucous honeysuckle. I've got some great flowers up here, and it's exhibiting one of the easiest ways to identify it. You can see that very last set of leaves is fused together, and it makes like a nice little teacup doily for the flowers. It presents them, sets them right up there. This one, instead of being like kind of a gnarly bush like some of our other honeysuckles, is a nice little vine that'll creep up along. It doesn't really choke anything out. It just grows in its own little space. So that's a really great little honeysuckle. They smell just as nice as all the other ones, and I really like seeing it out here. It's really a good find. Real quick, just because we might have some fern friends here in the mix, I'm going to hit just a couple of ferns here in a lightning round real fast. This first one, very triangular in shape, looks a lot actually like our big bracken ferns that you see all over the place, except these bracken ferns are giant. They've got a nice green stem. These ones are itty bitty, and they've got more of a black stem on them. So this is the common oak fern. Common in contrast to the limestone oak fern, which we also have in the Cheneaux areas, is a pretty rare species. I think it might be even state listed. So these common oak ferns you'll see in quite a few different places. They're popping up all over, very delicate looking and really just pleasant all around. So we've got our common oak fern, we heard about our limestone oak fern, we've got our big brackens over here, and a final one, really pretty also. This is not quite as triangular, stands nice and tall, almost as tall as our bracken ferns over there. This one though is extremely lacy. You can see just the kind of the color variation on all of these fronds. When we look at the bottoms down here, we can see, I hope you can see them, all those little black specks on the frond there way towards the base. That'll help us identify this fern actually, because this fern is a lady fern. Lady ferns have hairy legs. So anytime you're wondering, you see a nice lacy fern like this one here, really well divided pinnules here. They're really nice, very pleasant to look at. We can even look underneath to see if there might be some spores under there, but the most important spot to look way down at the bottom to see those hairy legs. So we'll cover just a couple more here because there is a great fern diversity in the Cheneaux. The Cheneaux are especially well known for their very unique geology, and that comes about when we're thinking about more of our different ferns. Whenever I am out hiking and I come across some nice giant limestone boulders like these two I've got in front of me, I always inspect pretty much every crevice of it because it might have something interesting hiding in between the crevices. As we look down here, we can see there's a lot of this really cool, very small fern I've got in front of me here. This is the maidenhair spleenwort. Really likes these limestone boulders, really is unique to this kind of area. I don't think we could really find this very easily in the lower peninsula until you get way down south where maybe they'll grow on some sandstone. But these huge boulders provide perfect habitat for these little maidenhair spleenworts, and there's no crevice too small and no rock too shallow for them to dive into. So we're probably going to end the video here in this beautiful cedar thicket that the Cheneaux are pretty famous for. I want to thank you so much for coming along and joining me on this little plant adventure. I hope you learned something. the Cheneaux Islands are a pretty incredible place. I know I don't have to tell you, but there's a lot of opportunities to go out and find these plants. Every plant I showed you today is pretty easy to find. They're all out there, luckily, because of the passion for preservation, conservation, and of course education in the Cheneaux Islands, one of which, you know, the Avery Arts and Nature Learning Center is a part of the education portion. We have a lot of opportunities to get out and find some really interesting stuff on all these preserves. Just today we visited, oh gosh, the Burge Preserve and the Murtaugh family addition to that preserve. We went to Loon Lake, we stopped at Mackinac Bay, we went to the William Derby Preserve, but in addition to those, there's the Carl Gerstacker Preserve, there's the Aldo Leopold Preserve, there's the John Arthur Woolen Preserve, owned by the Nature Conservancy, who also has a bunch of other preserves in the area. There's the Michigan Nature Association that also supplies public land for folks, so there's no shortage of opportunities to get out and find some of these awesome plants. It's just the tip of the iceberg of a fun day of exploration for any of you guys out there. So thanks again for tuning in and coming along with me, and I hope you have an awesome time. Have a great adventure.